But we begin today discussing gun ownership in this country in the wake of recent mass shootings. Reports over the last 2 weeks indicate that gun sales are surging, as are applications for conceal and carry permits. So this morning we're asking our viewers if recent shootings have motivated you to buy a gun. We want to hear from you this morning if you've bought several weapons, if you've considered it and decided against buying a gun. Tell us about your experience. We're dividing our phone lines a bit differently this morning. If you don't own a gun, the phone number is 202-748-8000. If you own less than 5 guns, it's 202-748-8001. If you own 5 to 20 guns, 202-748-8002. If you own 20 or more guns, 202-748-8003. You can also catch up with us on social media on Twitter, Facebook, or email us at journal@c-span.org. And a very good morning to you. Over the last 2 weeks, several stories in papers around the country about surging gun sales in this country. Here's the New York Times. In the wake of shootings, a familiar call to arms drives latest jump in weapon sales. So USA Today, firearms stocks jump amid gun control talk. Reuters story, Americans stock up on weapons after California shooting. And to CNN Money, Smith & Wesson gun sales surge. Here's a story from a local paper, the Sarasota Herald Tribune. The story noting that local gun dealers are trying to cope with a massive increase in demand for guns, ammunition, accessories, and firearms training classes. They say there are 2 reasons for the surge: a spate of recent terrorist attacks and the president's subsequent speech, during which he made renewed calls for more gun control. Bill Nagel of Sarasota's Gunsmith Gallery said most customers want AR-15 carbines, full-size handguns, and silencers. Quote, San Bernardino kicked it into overdrive, Nagel said. We've only got 3 ARs left. We usually have a lot more. Chris Wickoff of Sarasota's Fully Loaded Guns and Ammo said his customers are also seeking ARs, pistols, and silencers, among other items. Quote, everything's selling like crazy, he said. This is the first time I've nearly sold out of revolvers. Paris started the rush, and obviously what happened in California added to it. So we want to hear our viewers' stories this morning. Tell us about your experience buying a gun, your decision that you made in coming to buying a gun, and what you use guns for. Tell us about it. Edna's up first from Seminole, Florida. On that line for those who don't own a gun. Edna, good morning.
Good morning. The reason I don't own a gun is because I have an autistic grandchild. That is the only reason. I think everybody needs to have as many guns as they can afford, as big as they can, as many as they can, and carry them with them all the time. I think every American should have guns and be carrying them, because otherwise they're going to get killed by every terrorist that comes in this country, and the government is not going to protect you. They want to be just like Hitler was. Take all the guns away and kill all the Jews. And that's crazy. And that's exactly what they're going toward now. So everybody needs to just get as many guns as they can.
All right, Edna in Seminole, Florida. Sammy's up next. Kinston, North Carolina, on that line for those who own 5 or less. Sammy, good morning. You're on the Washington Journal.
Yes, good morning. I have approximately about 3 guns, but if you go to McDonald's and a child gets choked off of a Happy Meal or something like that, they can be sued. I think that the gun manufacturers should be able to be responsible for anybody a victim of a crime. They should pay for the funeral. They should pay for any medical type thing. The manufacturers of the bullets, they're giving a hazard to the community. They should, NRA and all of them should pay for the funerals and expenses.
Sammy, what do you use your guns for?
I just keep it for home protection only. I never had to use it other than target practice, but I've been in the Navy for 20 years, and I never really had to use a gun in the Navy other than qualifying for marksmanship. And
how easy is it to get a gun in Kinston, North Carolina?
Well, it's prevalent throughout the community. We got a lot of young people who know the job. Like, drive-by shooters.
Sammy, we're losing you there. Sorry about that. We'll go to Bob, who's waiting in Jacksonville, Texas, on that line for those who own 20 or more guns. Bob, good morning. You're on the Washington Journal.
Good morning. Thank you for taking my call.
Go ahead, Bob.
Oh, okay. I'm not motivated by these other things. I guess because I do own quite a few guns. I have almost 50, but they're collector guns. Used to hunt, but I don't even hunt anymore. And my idea of home protection is I've got a sawed-off double-barrel shotgun, and I don't believe there's a man alive that can get past that, even if he's wearing excuse me, even if he's wearing a vest. It's going to get his face. So, I'm not too worried about home protection. I don't see any need, and I don't own one either. I don't see any need at all for an assault rifle. They're no good for hunting. They're no, I'll take my shotgun any day.
With these reports about gun surges, Bob, around the country, do you think people are buying guns out of fear?
I don't think they're really stopping and thinking about it. This concealed carry thing. I've got a concealed carry license, but I don't carry my sidearm. I've got a .357 that I bought 25 years ago, probably, or 30. But I don't carry it unless I'm going through an area or traveling where I think I really might need it. But every day, no, I don't carry my sidearm. I think that's foolish. But anyway, I don't understand why the country's gotten so paranoid about this myself.
Paranoid about guns or about terrorism? Paranoid about what, Bob?
Well, both. I think you should have a gun for home protection, sure. But I'm not so sure about all this terrorism thing. If you're in an area where you're prone to need it, maybe so. But personally, I live kind of out of town, and I'm not too concerned about it.
Bob, thanks for the call from Jacksonville, Texas. On our Facebook page this morning, over 100 comments, over 200 comments at this point. Tom Blackford writes in, the recent shootings and the nonstop self-righteous crusade to demonize law-abiding gun owners and the Second Amendment, that is what is making me think about getting my first gun, he writes, to annoy liberals. And Uriel Randall writes below that, no, why would shootings make me want to buy a gun? The amendment that says that we have a right to bear arms should be null and void. There is no reason why we should have guns. Destroy them. People are too unstable to carry guns nowadays. Even the most mild-mannered person could lose it and use one. So get rid of the problem and destroy all guns and do not sell them to the public. Our question is, have you been motivated by these recent shootings to buy a gun? As we said, our phone line's a little bit different this morning in our first segment of the Washington Journal. If you don't own a gun, it's 202-748-8000. If you own less than 5 guns, 202-748-8001. If you own 5 to 20 guns, it's 202-748-8002. And if you own 20 or more guns, it's 202-748-8003. Here's some of the latest about what could be coming out of the White House in terms of new gun control executive actions. This story from the Hill newspaper. The White House is finalizing a new executive action that would expand background checks on gun purchases. According to one of the president's top aides, senior advisor Valerie Jarrett said on Wednesday this week that the president has asked his team to send him a completed plan in short order, according to an Associated Press report. A proposal Obama is reportedly considering would classify more sellers as high-volume dealers, which would close a legal loophole that allows many sales conducted online or at gun shows to skirt existing background check provisions. That's in the Hill newspaper if you want to read more on that. But we want to hear your stories this morning in our first 45 minutes. James is up next. Dunkirk, Maryland, on that line for those who don't own a gun. James, good morning.
Yes, thank you very much. These people can be categorized in different, there's angry white men who feels they're losing their privilege. It's Obama's fault. They no longer have the kind of jobs they used to have. They're just angry at anything, and as long as it's associated with Obama, they just want to protect themselves from this man, making the country, they're losing their privilege, and they just find excuses. And also, if you notice, most of the killings done in the black community are done by guns purchased illegally. They don't want to run straight.
James, talk about your experience. What has been your experience in terms of whether you consider owning a gun in the wake of what's happened recently?
I trust and I believe in the police. I mean, there's nothing I can do. If you live in an unsafe neighborhood, fine, maybe you might consider that. But if you live, it's to me, it's I believe and I trust and believe in the police to protect me. So I don't need it, because if you have it, then you want to use it, or you find every excuse to want to go for it for somebody, an idea or something. Believe me, they don't want all these guns traced, because if you notice, most of the killings done in the black community are done by guns sold by angry white folks that go to take those guns to gun shows, sell them real cheap, and that's how they find themselves in the black community.
All right, that's James in Dunkirk, Maryland. We'll go to Michael, Gadsden, Alabama, on that line for those who own less than 5 guns. Michael, good morning. You're on the Washington Journal.
How you doing this morning?
Good, Michael. Go ahead.
I just own one gun. Back a few years ago, I got a felony for, doing some bad stuff, and I'm in the process of getting my gun rights back. And it's a .270 hunting rifle, and that's all I use it for, is hunting. I've never really cared for handguns because I got a short temper, and I don't trust myself with one, but I think there should be, some background checks, and, and all these people, talking about Obama and stuff. I mean, he's the president of the United States. Have a little respect for the man. You know what I mean? There's just so much disrespect for him, and I've never seen this much disrespect towards a president of the United States. Whether you like him or not, respect the man. But, I think they ought to. I haven't bought one in Alabama. I'm not even sure if Alabama does background checks. You might know more than I do.
Michael, thanks for the call from Gadsden, Alabama. We'll go to Steve, waiting in Charlotte, North Carolina, on that line for those who own 5 to 20 guns. Steve, good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm good, Steve. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. Well, I grew up hunting, and am of the generation that won't go stomp around the woods unless we've got a fishing pole or a shotgun or something like that. But I got prepared, actually, right before we went into Iraq, because things didn't look good then. Luckily, the country didn't blow up. So I did buy one semi-assault rifle type. It's a SKS, but the rest of them are hunting, and the pistols for home protection. So it's one thing. I grew up in Memphis during the Civil Rights era, and so some of it's just home protection because there was a lot that was going on that I'd say the shotgun behind the door was something that you wanted to have.
Steve, would you say you ever bought one of those guns out of fear then? Was it in reaction to a specific incident?
You could definitely. Well, growing up in the duck and cover generation, where we thought social order was going to completely break down, I did buy one assault type rifle. It's called an SKS. It's same. It's the precursor to the AK. It was really cheap, and I can't believe the value of them now. But you could get fixed up with something like that for under $200 before we went into Iraq, and then after that, I've never seen the kind of gun hysteria that we've had in the last 20 years.
Steve, thanks for the call from Charlotte, North Carolina. We talked about the president with some of the executive actions that could be in the works when it comes to gun control. Of course, on the other side of this debate, leading the other side of this debate, the NRA has been very vocal in response to some of the president's proposals, what's been reported about what the president is considering. Here's an NRA ad that came out recently featuring Wayne LaPierre, the NRA president, talking about guns in this country.
You and I didn't choose to be targets in the age of terror, but innocents like us will continue to be slaughtered in concert halls, sports stadiums, restaurants, and airplanes. No amount of bloodshed will ever satisfy the demons among us. These cowards dream of inflicting more damage, more suffering, more terror. No target is too intimate or too sacred for these monsters. They will come to where we worship, where we educate, and where we live. But when evil knocks on our doors, Americans have a power no other people on the planet share. The full-throated right to defend our families and ourselves with our Second Amendment. Let fate decide if mercy is offered to the demons at our door. I'm the National Rifle Association of America, and I'm freedom's safest place.
And yesterday in USA Today, there was a column by Senior Chief Petty Officer James Hatch. The good guy with a gun myth is what Hatch writes about. He writes in his piece, in some cases, can a good guy with a gun neutralize the threat and help save lives? Absolutely, but it doesn't happen very often. It is, for the most part, a myth perpetuated by people who've never been shot at. He says, I'm a proud Navy combat veteran. I risked and nearly gave my life in dozens of combat situations in defense of our Constitution. I value the Second Amendment and the right of responsible Americans to own guns for self-defense, but people need to know that it is a fallacy to believe that the everyday gun owner can be expected to make all the right choices in a dangerous, fast-moving situation like a mass shooting with high-powered weapons. When the bullets are flying, he writes, determining who's who in the zoo is hard. That's Senior Chief Petty Officer James Hatch, founder of Spike's Canine Fund and a member of Veterans for Responsible Solutions. His piece that appeared yesterday in USA Today, if you want to read the full column. But we'll go to Oretta waiting in Clinton, Arkansas, on that line for those who own less than 5 guns. Oretta, thanks for waiting.
It's Olita,
Oh, sorry about that. Go ahead.
and I am a 78-year woman, soon to be 79. I've owned a gun all my life. I raised 5 kids, and they all knew and respected guns all their lives. But if I had problems and I needed the law, it would take 30, 45 minutes for one to get to where I live and where most of my neighbors live. And I use it for snakes and things like this. I think we all need a gun or two.
And Oretta, in Arkansas, Clinton, Arkansas, how easy is it to get a gun? Are there background checks required there? Have you ever had a problem getting a gun?
Yes, you have to have background checks, and they really do check you out good. And the places that you get on just about Walmart, and there's one shop that sells guns, and they do really good background checks here.
Thanks for the call. Oh, go ahead. I thought you were done.
They've been checking on our people for. If you want to buy a gun, you better have a good reputation.
Thanks for the call from Clinton, Arkansas this morning. NPR had a recent story from last week that looked at gun laws by states. One of our callers from Alabama earlier was asking about license or permits being required to purchase or own a gun. That chart right here, the dark brown are a license or permit being required for all firearms. The lighter brown, the states that require a license or permit just for handguns. You can also see waiting periods over here, the states that require waiting periods, again, for all firearms or handguns and assault weapons or just handguns only. And background checks is the chart below that. You can go through the NPR story. It's online. It was appeared December 9th under the headline, "Here's where gun laws stand in your state." Back to Mike, Bloomington, Illinois, on that line for those who own 20 or more guns. Mike, good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm good, Mike.
It's a fine, foggy morning here in central Illinois. So,
tell us about your experience. Have you bought one recently?
The last firearm I purchased was a Glock. That's been just not a year ago.
And have you ever purchased a gun out of fear, out of response to a specific situation, Mike?
Well, I purchased an AR-15 a couple years ago. I guess just call it part of the Obama firearm stimulus. He was talking about, I don't know. I think the best thing Democrats could do to reduce the number of guns on the street is just to quit talking about it. Because every time they open their mouth, you can almost look at the spike in background check. Kind of a silly thing. I have mine for personal protection. I have some that I just like the history behind. I think my big thing is if any of these things that were being proposed after a shooting would have actually stopped the shooting in particular, then I could see some sense behind that. But are you still there?
Yeah, listening, Mike.
Well, I mean, you take the San Bernardino thing, that was already illegal because it was a straw purchase, kind of what we're hearing. Somebody else bought these firearms for these two perpetrators. And as to whether they could have bought one legally, probably. Because, there was no involvement with the system. And the system works pretty good. I had an issue with a bipolar with my daughter. It's been about 9 years ago now, where I was arrested but not charged for domestic battery. And, when I went to purchase a firearm a year later, there was a delay in that till it was figured out, okay, he was not actually violating anything. So there is a system in place, and I think, what's there does what it's supposed to do. But, I mean, like I said, I just would ask people to look at any of these shootings and look at what's being proposed, like required background checks. That was in Oregon, I think, that shooter. They already had that. So, give me a solution that actually addresses a particular shooting, and I might, I could probably get behind that. But thus far, they just run to the same usual suspects, and I'm just never going to support that.
Mike, you mentioned San Bernardino. Here's the latest report of what we know at this point. This from the Washington Post. One of the attackers who killed 14 people in San Bernardino last week received the assault rifles used in the massacre from a friend to avoid arousing suspicion by purchasing them himself. According to a law enforcement official interviewed by the Washington Post, authorities have focused on Enrique Marquez, who is a neighbor and friend of Saeed Farouk, one of the attackers. Marquez provided the rifles used by Farouk and his wife, Tashfeen Malik, in last week's assault, which killed 14 people, of course, and injured 22 others. The New York Times also focusing on this story, noting Marquez talked of sleeper cells before the rampage is the headline in the New York Times front page lead story this morning. Back to the phones. Marilyn is waiting in Columbus, Ohio, on that line for those who don't own a gun. Marilyn, good morning.
Good morning. I don't own a gun. I have owned a gun. I see no problem with owning a gun for your home, but these assault rifles, they scare me. And I have different scenarios. What happens when everybody in a dark movie house is packing a gun? And these people who kill people, they don't have no intentions of coming out alive. So everybody else having a gun isn't going to deter them. But if there is a shooter in there and everybody gets to shooting in the dark, they don't know who the perpetrator is. You got a good Samaritan shooting other good Samaritans because they don't know who to really strike. And it's going to make it more difficult for the police. How's the police supposed to show up at the movie house, at the mall, and everybody's packing a gun? How are they supposed to know who the perpetrator is? And who would want to send their child to a movie house or to the mall knowing that everybody's packing a gun?
Marilyn, you mentioned your concern about assault weapons. You may want to stick around for our next segment of the Washington Journal this morning. Jim Kessler is going to join us. He's a senior vice president for policy at Third Way. He was also a key staffer back in 1994 when the 1994 assault weapons ban was passed. We're going to talk about the history and political climate of our country back in 1994 and how the assault weapons ban has continued to impact this debate through today. So stick around for that. That's coming up at 7:45. Go to Sean now, West Palm Beach, Florida. That line for those who own 5 to 20 guns. Sean, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good, Sean. What kind of guns do you own?
My wife and I owned, I would think, 4 or 5 semi-automatic handguns. We own 2 assault rifles, a couple shotguns.
Is it mostly for protection?
Yeah, I mean, we're shooting enthusiasts as well. So, different people choose to spend their leisure time doing different things. We enjoy going down to the range. I do have one hunting rifle. I've not been a hunter till now, but I do have some friends that hunt, so I thought about taking that up. I think that you're going to see a spike right now in gun sales. I think every time that there's some sort of legislation which is proposed, or somebody even begins the conversation about it, and oftentimes it's the left who brings that up, and then of course the right, often who are funded in large part by the gun lobby. They have their own reasons for fighting against it, but just from a common sense standpoint, you get people, when they hear there's going to be some restriction on guns, they want to get them now while they can, I suppose. But I think what you have going on right now, specifically after this latest shooting in California, is there is, I have people with whom I work who are more liberal-minded than I am, and they're beginning to talk about getting, handguns at least, or some sort of protection now for their family. I think because, truth be told, there's no way for the police to respond in time to an active shooter situation. You have, it's always a cleanup crew. They come in afterwards. They're maybe they secure the site or whatever, after 20 people are dead. So I think that if people who are responsible, I heard your last caller say something about everybody in the theater or everybody in the mall packing. I do have a concealed weapons permit, and I obviously, since I'm law-abiding, do not go into a gun-free zone carrying something like that. But if I go to a local store, or I'm out in public, I do have my concealed weapon on me. I'm the type of person who would, I do go to the range. I am proficient in the use of my weapon. I believe I'm a responsible, law-abiding individual. And if the need were to arise, like I said, I am proficient, and I could take steps to protecting myself and those around me. And I understand that there's a concern, friendly fire, maybe somebody getting caught in a crossfire or something like that. But when you see these situations that come in, especially like the one in Paris, there was 120 people or thereabouts who were slaughtered. It was like a shooting gallery, and there was no recourse for those individuals. They had no way of protecting themselves. So I think it's multifaceted. I think the thing on assault rifles, I think maybe there should be a conversation on that, even though I do own more than one. I can see where there could be some concern about that, or high-capacity magazines, but, it becomes such a polarized conversation where it's knee-jerk on both sides, so maybe
Sean, can I ask you,
some way to,
if that conversation were to advance to another assault weapons ban, would you be willing to turn over the rifle that you have if it came under that ban?
I think if the question is whether or not I would comply with the law of the land, I always have to this point, so I don't suppose there's any way that I could avoid that. I don't imagine it's probably going to come to that. I think even with the last assault ban, rifle ban there was, the people that already own something, I don't think they're going to go house to house. And it's to take away something that somebody already has is a lot more difficult than simply saying we're not going to allow the manufacture and or sale of a certain product. So I understand it's a hypothetical. Hypothetically speaking, I'm not going to do anything that puts me on the wrong side of the law.
Well, Sean, you mentioned conceal and carry permits. There's a story in today's Wall Street Journal talking about concealed carry requests on the rise. Authorities across the country are getting a flood of applications to carry concealed weapons in the wake of those shootings. The sheriff's office in San Bernardino, California, site of last week's shooting, said that it had received about 80 applications for concealed and carry permits by this week, compared with 10 or 12 that they might receive in a typical week. Sheriffs in some counties are actively encouraging people to carry firearms. Quote, I want to encourage citizens in Ulster County, New York, who are licensed to carry a firearm to please do so, according to Sheriff Paul Blarkham in a December 3rd message on his office's Facebook page. If you want to read that story, it's in the Wall Street Journal. Of course, it's not just the president who has been talking about new gun control measures. Democrats in Congress this week spent a lot of time talking about this issue, including House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi. Here she is in her press conference on Friday, talking about the upcoming anniversary of the Newtown shooting and the gun violence toll in the United States since then.
I mentioned that Monday marks the 3-year anniversary of the heartbreaking shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary School. That's about 1,000 days, a little more than 1,000 days. And in that 1,000 days have been a little more than 1,000 mass murders, more than 1,000 mass shootings, almost one a day. Sandy Hook and San Bernardino are bookends of a daily tragedy of gun violence that tears apart communities across the country. Gun violence has claimed over 90,000 American lives in the past 3 years. We have a responsibility to address this. It's a public health issue. It is an epidemic, and we join the vigils that are happening. We had it yesterday here, but across the country, to honor those who not only lost their lives at Sandy Hook, at Newtown, but across the country.
Republicans in Congress also talking about this issue in response to some of the proposals that the president and Democrats have put out there. Congressman Jeff Duncan is a Republican from South Carolina, tweeting this week, "How are those restrictions on firearms working out in Chicago? Violence is less about guns and more about morals of society." Speaking of tweets, you can follow along with the conversation this morning on the Washington Journal. It's at C-SPAN WJ is where that conversation takes place. Here's a few tweets that have been happening this morning. Peg writes, "I have a right to have a reasonable level of security and should not be forced to carry a weapon in order to have any sense of security." Jimmy says, "I believe to get any gun, you should have to take a test. It should be like taking a test for a pilot license." Jody writes, "If someone wants an assault weapon, they should join the Army. My mind goes back to the little girl shooting her instructor." And JWS writes, "We need more guns. This is the only way to fight the terrorists. Obama sure won't. He doesn't even know what to call them." We're taking your comments this morning to this question we're asking: have recent shootings motivated you to buy a gun? Lines for those who don't own a gun and divvied up by number of guns owned. If you want to call in, Teresa is calling in on that line for those who don't own a gun. Gulf Breeze, Florida. Teresa, good morning. You're on the Washington Journal.
Good morning. Thank you for taking my call. I love your show.
Appreciate it. Go ahead.
I have really been concerned about my safety in this country, not only by terrorists from outside and for their radical Islamic, but crime, drugs. I mean, it's really getting bad out here. It's really become a very unsafe society because of many factors, and also the mentally ill. So combine it all together, and the average citizen, middle-class citizen, who has to go out and work and shop and take care of kids and go to events, it's become very frightening. So I think it's important to know how to defend yourself, not only with a handgun, but also taking karate classes, self-defense, whatever you need to do to empower yourself. The problem is a lot of people don't take guns as seriously as they need to. When you have children around, you need to be very careful, and you need to know how to use your firearm. And you need to be confident with it. You can't be, because when you're being attacked, as any military person will tell you, your adrenaline goes up and you become very, very afraid and shaky, and you have to really know what you're doing. And so, how does the government ensure that? We're allowing people to drive cars that are very powerful and texting and killing people.
So, Teresa, would you agree with Jimmy, who in his tweet said that to get a gun, you should take a test, like taking a test for a pilot's license?
Well, I hate to have the government involved in my life any more than it is, but I think, when it comes to firearms, you need to, treat it at least as on the same level as getting a license to drive a car. I mean, you should be able to prove that you know how to use it, and you should be able to prove that you understand how to clean it, and you need to prove that you have someplace safe to keep the weapons. That's like basic safety, and how do you control that? You either leave it up to the people who are buying the firearms to understand this and certify themselves, or you get the government involved, and that's where that's where it gets tricky, because you have one set of people that don't want the federal government legislating anymore. because they fail. They're grossly negligent in everything they do. And so it keeps coming out. They can't control the visas. They can't control the border. They can't control the drugs. They can't control the crime. They can't control the universities. They can't control anything. So people are really, at their, it's the final straw.
Teresa, thanks for the call from Gulf Breeze. Jeannie's up next, Statesville, North Carolina. That line for those who own 20 or more guns. Jeannie, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for taking my call.
What kind of guns do you own, Jeannie?
We own everything from a 22 pistol up to an assault rifle in this home. And we're avid hunters and just shooting enthusiasts. But I'd like to say that none of the guns have been bought out of fear. And here in North Carolina, if you go to get a gun permit, they don't have to give you that gun permit. If they see any kind of red flag, even if you've not been charged with a felony or anything, they won't give you a gun permit. So I think we have good laws in place to stop people from getting guns that don't need it. But the thing about it is, criminals and terrorists can get guns anywhere. They don't have to get the guns legal. They can just go buy them off the street, So the more, I believe in the Second Amendment and all these more gun control laws, it's not going to help anything. It's not going to stop the criminals from getting the guns.
Can I ask you, you say you've never bought a gun out of fear. Have you ever bought a gun out of concern that the government might take your right away from buying that particular kind of gun?
Well, I have not, but my son has. He has bought an assault rifle because he just likes to shoot, and he was in fear that they might stop selling them. Yes.
And what kind of rifle was that?
It's an AR.
And is it something?
An AR. It shoots a lot of rounds. I know that much.
And what does he use it for?
Just to target practice. That's it. And nobody here carries a gun on their person. The guns are all at home. We don't carry a gun on our person. But all these shootings have made me think about going to get my concealed permit, because if you're out shopping and somebody tries to come up and mug you or kill you or something, you really need that on you for your protection. And me as a woman especially, a big person can overpower you. I'm a small woman. A big person can overpower you, and it has made me think about, I think I'm going to go file for my concealed permit.
All right, Jeannie, thanks for the call from Statesville, North Carolina. Harold's up next, calling in from Alabama on that line for those who own 5 to 20 guns. Harold, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for taking my call.
Go ahead, Harold. Have recent shootings motivated you to buy a new gun?
No, sir. I own guns ever since I was a kid. My daddy taught me how to hunt rabbits and squirrels, and I never have thought to do no harm with no gun no more than that. And I married when I was 18 years old, and I did buy a pistol to protect my family just in case somebody did, but I wasn't looking for trouble. But I just wanted to make a point this morning, and the other lady before me, she had a real good, she stole my thunder, but I'm going to add something to this. What problem that we have in the area I have some good friends, and now when they hear that they're going to take your guns away, that puts fear in them. And they going out buying all the guns they can buy and all the bullets they can buy up. Now, people bringing on mental illness. A mental illness person cannot plot no killing. These are evil people. And these people say they Christian folks. It costs President Obama don't take their guns. And I'm a preacher, by the way, and I was in the music store, and the guy was talking about taking the gun. He wanted me to get angry with him, and I just stood back and let him talk. And then I asked him, I said, when are he going to take these guns? His wife said, no, he just playing. Now, what's going on is intimidation. People say they're mental ill. They're not mental ill, sir. What it is, they're evil, and they think somebody's going to take to it. Now, these guns been killing people ever since I was born, and still kill people. But since this got this black president, it seems like everything is on him. He's the evil person. He's not God. He can't be at the same place at the same time. And we don't want the government to do nothing for us anymore. We want to do it on our own. And you know what? You don't love your family if you have evil in you. And gun, it takes a strong person to pull a pistol. It really does. Now, the lady was talking about being overtaken, being small. They don't understand. When most people shoot a gun, the first thing they're going to do is hit the floor. And everybody arm everybody, you're going to be like Wild West West. Somebody that I hate, I don't like, I can start an argument with that person and make that person make me shoot him because that's what I want. And I can say, well, he pulled a gun. He might not even have a gun. So I don't think the message is sent out. And I'm challenging all preachers, ministers, pastors, these big apathetic people that make millions of dollars to come forward on TV. I wish I could. I don't have the money. Only thing I can do is do Washington Journal. I love Washington Journal. Come forward and address your thing about violence with guns and violence with people. I think it'll be better because the government should be up on the shoulder of God, not man.
All right, that's Harold calling in from Alabama this morning. Time for a few more calls. Just want to review for our viewers what happened yesterday, though, here on Capitol Hill. The House joining the Senate in passing a stopgap funding measure to keep the federal government running. They passed that bill yesterday to give Congress until the middle of next week to complete a deal on a year-end appropriations package that's needed to fund the government. Of course, the Senate passed their version by voice vote on Thursday. Negotiators plan to work through the weekend as they haggle over what policy riders should be attached to the legislation and how to handle a separate package of tax breaks for businesses and individuals. We'll be talking about that second part, the tax breaks for businesses and individuals, coming up later in the Washington Journal this morning at about 8:30 or so. We'll be going through some of the tax breaks that are being considered. If you want to stick around with that, Pete Sepp will be joining us this morning from the National Taxpayers Union. Want to get a few more calls in, though. This question: have recent shootings motivated you to buy a gun? Flo is up next. Fort Lauderdale, Florida, on that line for those who own less than 5 guns. Flo, good morning.
Hi, good morning, John. This is an interesting topic. Everybody has a personal idea about gun ownership, but here in Florida, we had on I-95 just a couple of weeks ago, we had an 8-hour holdup. 2 people were shot, and then the Paris attack, one gun was traced to South Florida, one of the assault weapons. And if you're a black belt in karate, you can be shot. Up in Rochester, where I came from, this black belt, she had a black belt, and she was shot in a gas station where she was working. Bruce Lee, and I don't know what's going on, but you have to be a mind reader. You don't know what people are going to do with these guns. Then we have the Trayvon Martin case. But on the other hand, if somebody's trying to break into my house, I want to have the right to protect myself.
So, Flo, is that what you use your guns for protection, to give yourself a sense of protection? Have you ever had to draw your weapon?
No. But here, listen to this. My father-in-law, who made his own guns, he worked for GE, tool and die maker. Everybody had, the kids were brought up with they were very strict on taking care of their guns. We never had a problem, but then when he was older, he almost shot his own arm off with his own weapon. So I'm all over the place in this.
So, Flo, where are you in terms of increased gun control in this country? Is there are there certain measures that you think are appropriate?
Well, I think some common sense gun control, but people even seem to be opposed to that. So,
what does common sense mean? What's an example of common sense gun control?
Well, common sense is, well, they have that no-fly list where they want to ban people on the no-fly list, but then there's people on the no-fly list that shouldn't be on there. So I really don't know what's going on. Do you?
We're working our way through that, Flo. We're going to be following all the movement here on Capitol Hill. The no-fly list issue that you brought up, the president brought it up in his Oval Office address on Sunday, trying to get Congress to move new legislation that would keep guns from the hands of those from being purchased by those who appear on those no-fly lists. Let's get a few more calls in. John is in Sterling, Virginia, on that line for those who don't own a gun. John, good morning.
Good morning, John. Thank you for taking my call. I just want to say that people have to realize one thing. It is not the gun. I don't want a gun, and I don't have to have a gun. I think the problem is the narrative that people like Fox News are telling people. When you keep telling the American people the government is your problem, people are frustrated. They will say that, okay, I have to defend myself. I'm listening to some of these callers, and I'm really, as an immigrant who came to this country 30 years ago, they don't understand what they have in this country. When you keep attacking and doing a narrative that government is the problem, Barack Obama is your problem, it is not the problem. The problem is a gun manufacturer and people that they pay money, the lobbyists that will get money from the gun the gun manufacturers. The problem here is this: every time that our children has been slaughtered, like New Hampshire, I don't know if the people will not change their mind. We need to have a sensible law that people can own a gun, but who should take the responsibility when your gun that you bought it killed by innocent people? Are you going to take that responsibility, or are you going to say, "Oh, my son is mentally sick"? I mean, look what happened to the children in New Hampshire school. I mean,
you talking about Newtown, Connecticut, John?
The flag. We put this flag down halfway every 6 months. We cry. Life goes on. Where are we going to stop this crazy things?
All right, and we'll try to get in Alex, Manchester, New Hampshire, on that line for those who own 5 to 20 guns. Alex, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for taking my call. People's comments this morning have been a target-rich environment. I'd like to address two of the previous callers. First, this caller from Virginia. There is not a collective solution to an individual problem. There's the first problem in the mindset of people in firearms. And the second is that woman from Florida who's comparing a driver's license to owning a firearm has a serious confusion of Second Amendment rights and privileges. There's a huge difference. This country thinks everything is a right. Healthcare is a right. Food's a right. It's like, no, those are privileges. Thomas Jefferson is, to paraphrase Thomas Jefferson, without the Second Amendment, the other amendments are useless. And
Thought you're done, Alex, Manchester, New Hampshire. But we're done in this segment, but we're going to keep talking about the issue of guns in this country. Coming up in our next segment, we're going to look back to the assault weapons ban from 1994 and talk about how that legislation continues to influence the gun debate today. And later, Pete said,
I'm the leading state sponsor of terrorism.